Hi, I'm a Sand Recap and this is a movie to get the pale blue eye. With the assistance of a young cadet who will one day become the world-famous author Edgar Allan Poe, veteran detective Augustus Landor investigates a series of grisly murders. The film opens in 1830 with a gallows suspended in the nighttime fog from a long rope. The story moves to the snowy banks of the river in the following scene, where the main character, retired Constable Landor, washes his hands. Captain Hitchcock is leading a carriage that is awaiting near the house. He says that Colonel Thayer, the director of the military academy West Point, wants to see him. Compromising evidence was unearthed by the commandant quietly. They assert that Landor morally deteriorates from alcoholism after his wife's death and his daughter's escape from unknown hands. But in a delicate situation, his remarkable deductive skills will be useful. An investigation into the noose-bound death of Cadet Leroy Fry. The abuse of the body exacerbates the situation. The corpse's heart was removed at night. Landor goes to the doctor's office, where he and Dr. Marquis are looking at the body. The doctor explains that if a man is strong enough to spread his chest and knows where to cut, anyone can remove an organ. On a walk, a colonel says that bad people could use the incident to close the academy. The detective investigates the crimes that took place while also questioning a witness, a cadet who found the body, because he or she is aware of the significance of the task at hand. He claimed that the dead man was hanging, with his feet touching the ground, as if the rope had been pulled and then released. Landor examines the body once more to test his theory. The victim resisted, as evidenced by the nature of the neck bruises and their condition. The doctor is asked to feel your head by the detective. Marquis finds a cut in his clenched fingers and a bruise on the back of his head from a blow. The note is only left with paper. One of the cadets approaches the detective as he surveys the area. He tells the stranger that the man in question is clearly a poet and explains why the stranger has arrived. Landor questions the nighttime guard at the dead body following this conversation. The witness claims that an officer dressed in an odd uniform appeared in the dark. It only had insignia on one side. The constable goes to a tavern in the evening, where he meets an enigmatic civilian cadet who told me about the poet during the day. A young man claims to be Edgar Allan Poe. They discuss symbolism. Despite its unassuming appearance, the heart has a significant symbolic significance. As a result, the person who took him clearly had religious as well as poetic motivations. Poe also says that he didn't know the person who died, but he says the name of his friend. Landor gives the roommate of the deceased Fry a report the following day. The young man admits that he called a bad company and cut off communication with the deceased, but he does not know who they are or why they are bad. The second respondent saw Fry last because he was leaving an important matter after the lights went out at night. The captain was informed of a new occurrence as soon as the interrogation ended. A nearby cow and sheep had their hearts cut out when they were killed. The academy is subjected to a curfew because the captain believes that only one person is to blame. Poe is asked to assist Landor in the investigation, to serve as the cadet's ears and eyes. He also gives him a piece of the found note for him to decipher. The young man pays the hot detective a visit in the evening. He figures out that the note was an invitation to a secret meeting, probably with a woman, through simple deductions. The cadet believes that the historic church by the river is the most likely location. He also remembers seeing a stunningly beautiful, weeping girl on the academy's grounds the morning after Fry's death. Landor recalls the doctor's words that the heart should be kept in an ice-filled container the following day as he looked around the hospital. The same is true here. The detective travels to the old church on the coast, leaving Poe's note in the designated location. He finds spots of melted candle wax in the underground. The hero has already cleared the floor of all debris and sketched everything he finds in a notebook when a cadet appears. It appears to be the relics of a ritual, as it is a circle with a triangle that has been etched with blood and candle wax. However, Poe is unsure of what it all means. Landor goes to an old friend, professor of occultism Pepe, to figure it out. He talks about Inquisitor Leclerc, who killed himself after killing hundreds of witches. He left a treatise on witchcraft sciences. The original hasn't survived, so collectors are looking for copies. Poe is asked to read an excerpt from another book by Pepe, in which it is mentioned that satanic rituals involve the hearts of humans and animals. Like Fry, the hangman's heart is especially important. Poe is given the task of determining which of the cadets uses dark magic from Landor. The young man directly inquires of his colleagues about what children think, that this is the son of the doctor, Artemis Marquis. Poe visits the doctor with this information, feigning exhaustion in order to take a day off. Artemis was intrigued by the fact that the young man was carrying a certificate to the officer. After the lights go out, the doctor's son invites him to a secret meeting. Poe meets a gang there. They drink, play cards, and talk about a lot of different things, like the girls, especially Artemis' sister, 𝐵𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿, who, according to another cadet, charmed the late Leroy Fry, but carefully recalls the conversation for the detective to hear. The cadet's funeral takes place the following day. Fry's mother approaches Landor after the burial to request his son's personal diary. Because the deceased person's room was meticulously searched, the detective is left wondering how he got to her. The woman acknowledges that 𝐵𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿, a friend of her son, was included in the diary. However, because the records are encrypted, it is best if they remain with the person conducting the investigation. Later, Landor and his wife meet the doctor. A woman asks the detective about his deceased wife, expressing both tactlessness and condolences, because she not only wants to believe, but also wants to know everything. The hero begins to read the diary after returning home and soaking the pages in solution. The cadets are invited to visit by Artemis. Poe meets a charming girl there, the same girl he saw the morning after the murder, 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬, Artemis' sister. He asks her about a meeting as he is leaving, selecting a cemetery as the location. 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬, intrigued, concurs that 𝐵𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿 does not particularly enjoy it. Poe and 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬 go for a walk through the snowy graveyard on the scheduled day, talking about poetry and feeling down. The girl has an epileptic fit right on the snow as the meeting ends. The young man leans over her in fear, but the attack passes quickly, and they return home. Poe returns to the barracks after escorting the lady. He hears something suspicious in the evening fog, and he knows it's not a horse. It knocks 𝐵𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿 to the ground and beats her for a date with 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬. When Cadet interferes with Landor, he almost chokes Poe, but with a kick honed over many years in the police, he throws the bully away and raises the club to continue the conversation. After spending time with Poe in a tavern, the detective stays the night with the owner of the establishment. They talk about who the real killer is in bed, Artemis, 𝐵𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿, or another individual. Even though the cadets approached with suspicion, the professional detective knows instinctively to investigate further. It turns out that 𝐵𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿 has left in the morning. The mistress beats dishes and leaves the table, but Landor does not respond to suggestions. Next up is 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬. Doctor and detective leave the boys alone and go to the office, where the guest looks at the library and decorations. While Artemis does not report that his sister is feeling better and is playing the piano, they have a pleasant conversation. The doctor is willing to listen, but the detective wants to go outside in the fresh air, so the doctor declines. He searches the house with a candle for clues while the entire family is occupied with entertainment. In the dressing room, a worn-out tunic shows no signs of wear on one side. The guest is discovered by the hostess here, and they descend significantly. The duty officers saw the detective wearing a similar tunic on the night that Fry's heart was removed. When someone knocks on the door, Landor doesn't have time to make an accusation. Captain Hitchcock arrives to report the disappearance of another cadet. The detective is under the impression that the cadet simply fled. His belongings were gone, and since he was Fry and 𝐵𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿's best friend, he might have been worried about who would die next. The hero is certain, despite the authorities' desire to arrest Artemis as the main suspect, they won't show anything because he is everything. Poe pays 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬 a visit and reads a poem he wrote in her honor. The young man declares his love for her and declares that he will do anything for her. Landor returns to Pepe at this time to learn more about the witchcraft treatise written by Inquisitor Leclerc. The puzzle is folded in the detective's head as the professor shows him a portrait of this citizen. Landor returns to Dr. Marquis, where a portrait of the same Leclerc's ancestor hangs on the wall. One of the very few copies of the book the detective wrote, the one in which the sacrificial practices are described, is on the shelf. The hero believes that the entire family is responsible for 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬's death in order to control her hearts, carry out a ritual, and thus cure her illness that she saw in a vision. 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬 and Artemis are, in fact, carrying out a bloody ritual at this very moment, choosing Poe as their victim, despite the fact that the assumption appears to be fantastic. He does not resist when they bring him to his chest knife, whether he is drunk or voluntarily agrees. The procedure is disrupted by Landor's abrupt appearance. The Marquises reach for their knives but drop them by accident. A light source that illuminates beams and walls. The mother encourages her daughter to finish what she started while Artemis is beating the officer. She is reading a spell when a burning beam knocks her down, interrupting her. While Landor pulls Poe and the doctor's wife first, brother rushes to help. Artemis and 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬 are buried beneath the smoldering rubble when the roof gives way at that exact moment. Landor is about to leave the academy after visiting Poe in the infirmary. Captain Hitchcock apologizes at the end for having doubts about his suitability for the job. Reporting that the detective's assistants prevented the school from closing, Colonel Hire personally leads the detective down the alley. Detective Landor departs the scene with the case solved. However, the tale does not end there. Poe informs Landor that he has learned the truth about his daughters when he goes there. The cadet explains how he was able to identify the real perpetrator. He determined that they were written by a single person by comparing the handwriting to the fragment on the detective's note. Landor wrote to Fry, but why? The reason was made clear thanks to the tavern's proprietor. She claimed that 3 cadets had raped the detective's daughter after the ball. The girl, humiliated and beaten, returned to her father with the ripped medallion in her hand, with LF standing for Leroy Fry. The girl, unable to recover, took her own life by jumping off a cliff into the river in front of her father. A devastated parent will have no choice but to entice the only known rapist out of the barracks at night. He was tortured by Landor to learn the others' names, but he died before he could say anything. However, the former policeman was asked to look into his own murder the following day. The desecration of the body added to the situation's ugliness. The Marquesas obtained the gallows heart by taking advantage of a chance discovery. To cover his tracks, Landor removes the hearts of nearby animals, imitating Satanist practices. He dealt with Ballinger and severed his heart after deciphering the diary that was left behind. He also learned the names of the other rapists. The last cadet made it out safely, but the old man doesn't want to follow him across the country because he will probably live the rest of his life in fear and expect retribution. To ease his soul, Poe wonders why Landor didn't tell him. That's exactly what the detective does as he holds up a sealed letter. However, the youth burns it. Poe leaves, and Landor tells Poe that if his daughter met a young man, they might have become related, he would be happy. Landor goes to a rock where I last saw my daughter when he is alone. As she did before falling, he stands on the very edge with his back to the water. As a sign of liberation from loss, the hero releases the belt from her outfit that is clamped in his hand.